What's up, Conroe? Welcome to a brand new edition of Nerd Thug Sports right here on 104.5, 106.1, the sister stations. Streaming worldwide at irlonestar.com. This is Corey DLG, and with me as usual is little brother Nico. How are we doing, buddy?
Doing all right.
I like it. We're hanging out here on this sports show. Not a ton going on in the sports world. I did just see a story that freaked me out right before I clicked in here. There's a man in Japan running for governor of the Chiba Prefecture. I don't know. I'm not familiar with their region, so I'm probably getting that part wrong. Who is specifically dressed up exactly like the Joker, face paint and all.
Which version?
A little bit Dark Knight, but mostly Joaquin Phoenix.
I mean, it makes sense. That's the new one that everyone's jazzing about.
It was he announced, I guess, today. I don't know, time zones and all that, so recently, but it hit here today now that he's running for governor. And he's running as a member of the party of the Let's Make Chiba the Land of Fun and Dreams That Are Real party.
Nice.
I'm guessing that's an English translation.
Yeah, it probably has like an actual word for that.
Right. It doesn't really flow this way.
Pretty fantastic name though.
So
like, I'm gonna start a political party and just call it the land where I make dreams come true.
Right.
And
this is the Dreams Come True party, and we're here to make everyone happy.
Like the one guy that ran for president like 10 years ago, or like one of the governorships, and he just wore a boot on his head.
I don't think that was us. I think that was I believe it's Great Britain, who has an or no. John Oliver's done a special on this. One of the countries you don't actually have to put any. There's no like qualifications to being their like prime minister, and so a few years ago, somebody essentially made like a Darth Vader ripoff. And he was running to subject everyone to the servitude of the Empire.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah, it was pretty solid. It was a good bit. And I think that's where the boothead guy comes from, too. He was running to be prime minister of... I mean, this might be, Newfoundland or something. I'm not sure. But it's one of these smaller Swede-type countries where they've never really been that concerned about who their prime minister is.
Yeah, like, they're not really going to fight anybody. Like, we're not really that worried about it.
It's sort of like Canada.
Yeah. Like, Canada's cool, and then you realize that, like, 89% of it's uninhabitable, just ice.
Also, there's a whole province that's still French.
There's half the country still French.
Right, but there's specifically a province. I guess it's Quebec, maybe? I don't know enough about Canada. This is really going to be about how I don't know my geography.
But because there's two capitals. Because there's Quebec, which speaks French, and then Toronto, which speaks English.
Right, yeah, exactly. And so, like, I don't mean, like, how Spanish is helpful in the Southwest. I mean, literally, the language of Quebec is French.
Yeah.
That's not.
And they look down at you because you don't speak French and or
Canadian.
Don't speak English.
Yeah. That's not the same thing. Like when 80% of the country speaks one language and then there's a province that just speaks the other. That's some weird nation building.
Yeah, like there was never any mingling, guys.
There's never what?
Any mingling? Like we never got like the.
You guys never
hey, you should learn our language. Oh, that'd be cool. Wrong.
Why are you even at this party?
Right? Yeah, like In America, the greatest difference is like what people call soda. Like
That's true.
like it's not like California speak German.
Right. Yeah. Listen, if the people of Rhode Island spoke, I don't know, I guess German or something, like we would have an issue with it. Like in their schools, everyone has to know German to get an education. Like we'd be like, wait, what? Why are we? How did this happen exactly?
Yeah, but only in Rhode Island.
Right. That's it. You literally drive 10 minutes over the border, and you're back to English town. Like
That's what I'm saying. Like, why is there such strict boundaries?
it's so bizarre. But that's just why Canada's Canada. Also, do you remember a couple years ago during the Trump era when Canada had like beef with Iran?
Not really, honestly. I don't keep up with Canada news.
Well, Canada. I mean, I don't remember the exact parameters of the news story, but essentially, Canada did something internationally that was kind of like an obvious thing. Like they had been, I think they turned down an offer or something along those lines from Iran, but in their statement, they were like, "Yeah, we don't really associate with terrorists." And Iran was like, "Whoa, hold up on the T word," and like they were like, "We have been embarrassed on a national stage or an international stage by Canada, and we will not forget this." Like,
Never forget Canada betrayed you.
it was kind of it was like, are they going to come to blows over this? Like, but then it wound up being like,
no one fights Canada.
well, that was my thought, right? Like, but then it was just two drunk guys talking in a parking lot. Like, they both were like, "Come on, do something. Come on, you do something. I'll
You
finish it, but
apologize.
you do it."
Right, yeah.
Yeah. It got embarrassing real quick. But yes, welcome to Nerd Thug Sports.
News about Canada edition.
News about Canada and Japan's potential new governor, the Joker. Actually, he's running under his own name, but he's clearly
He's just dressed as the Joker.
Yeah.
That might be even more of a power move.
It's definitely one that at least begs questioning, but I don't know that anyone has yet. So,
power move.
Yeah, he's nailing it. It's definitely weird to look at. I mean, there's no getting around it. Okay, so there's not a ton going on in the sports world. We just did All-Star Weekend, so I think this is like the week off for the NBA. The big news today is Duke is going to be out of the ACC tournament due to a COVID positive test.
Get absolutely demolished.
Here's the thing, though. Duke is having a down year. It's just not their year.
Well, I mean, yes, because their last year was so ridiculous.
Well, yeah, it really was. And they've been losing a lot. The season's been so up down because of COVID. You never actually know what games you're going to play. You never actually know what travel plans are going to happen. It's just been a complicated year for college basketball.
It's been a complicated year for sports in general.
For sure, but college basketball seems to have been hit of all the hardest.
Probably.
It's
college sports in general, I would like to assume.
Well, yeah, but like there's just no rhyme or reason to the college basketball season. It's been a lot of starting and stopping.
Which is a good thing because I hate college sports.
Yeah, I really don't have a lot of sympathy for the whole process. It's just
oh no, our horrible and corrupt system isn't working nearly as well.
Right, like it's I'm fine with it.
It's like, oh no.
But
I feel so bad.
But I definitely think it's worth pointing out that
it's just not functioning right now.
It's just not functioning. It's just completely broken. And Duke, who is typically the poster boy for great success, has always been a little bit of the duck in a pond, just water just rolling off its back. Like, no real issues. Even as college basketball itself deals with issue after issue after issue, Duke has always seemed to manage to just kind of avoid them, even though they're perpetually named and stuff. Coach Krzyzewski is regularly mentioned in different articles written about corruption. Like, they're always kind of right on the edge of it. And just when you think, is Duke going to be in trouble, nothing ever happens. It all kind of goes away. We're going to find out at some point that Mike Krzyzewski is either like the most like godfather figure in sports, or he really did run a clean program, but everyone else kind of came for him always. And I'm curious which way it is. Like, I don't know that I believe. College basketball is such a bad name that I don't know that I really believe that he's run a clean program all these years.
Right, especially with all the talent and all the things that he's done. I don't doubt for a second, with how sleazy college sports is, that he's not just like the worst.
Yeah, he's either the worst or
he's just that much better than everyone else, or he is the worst. Those are the only two options.
Exactly. And he's only done it he's been at Duke forever. It's hard to I'm just trying to
it's trying to quantify how much.
It's sort of like a Bill Belichick thing. Like, if we found out that Bill Belichick was actually from the future and knew the other team's play calling every game before it happened, I don't know that anybody would even be surprised. They'd be like, "Yeah, time travel. We knew it. Yeah, obviously."
He was good for a reason. Yeah. Now I understand.
Because his level of success is just so unmatched. And Duke has been great forever. And a lot of that is to do with Mike Krzyzewski. And I don't know. It would surprise me to find out that this is all based on his skill as a coach. And it saddens me to say that a little bit. Like, it's sort of disappointing to be like, yeah, he probably is cheating. But more than likely, he probably is cheating. And
I mean, that's just cheating, but not actually, because college sports is dumb and you can't pay players, but whatever. Cheating by the rules that are made up that are bad.
Right. Cheating by the rules that they don't enforce, but are written down. It's cheating.
Right. And sometimes it comes up, sometimes it's not, but usually only when we're mad at you or we don't like you.
Right. Now, there was a story over the weekend talking about corruption in college sports that was interesting, because if it had played out, it would have blown the lid off of high-level college athletics. But as it typically does, it fizzles out right away because of several different reasons we can get into here. But a news story broke. Not a news. It was a rumor that allegedly, to get Nick Chubb, the monstrous running back of the Cleveland Browns, to stay at the University of Georgia for his senior year, allegedly they paid him $900,000.
Ooh.
Allegedly. When this was said, a couple people very quickly pointed out that when he was drafted after his senior year, that he basically got a signing bonus of $1 million. And then on top of that, I mean, his first contract was his rookie deal is, I think it's $8 or $9 million with a fifth-year option for like 12 or 13. So it isn't as though you've got a lot more money going to the NFL than staying.
Right, yeah.
But
an extra $1 million don't hurt.
Right. He then tweeted out, if I needed the money, I would have gone to the league. Which is a fair point. Although, I mean, $900,000 is enough. Like, okay, if you got an insurance policy in your pocket that says if I get hurt and don't make it to the NFL, I get X amount of money. If you have that insurance policy, which most players do get their junior and senior year, and someone handed him $900,000 in cash to basically try for a national championship, I don't know. I mean, that's about what he would have made his rookie year anyway.
Right, yeah. Getting paid, I'd go to the league. Well, why go to the league when you can just play college football and get $1 million?
Right. So, I mean, think about it this way. He would only play 10 or 11 games, plus whatever the playoff situation is. He might win a Heisman. He might win a national title.
Yeah, what are the downsides here?
Right. As long as he has that insurance policy, he's gonna either get NFL money or get to the NFL anyway. I don't know that it's inconceivable that $900,000 would have kept him. I don't know that. I kind of think there's a part of me that hears that and thinks, yeah,
definitely.
I think there are guys who would have accepted that. Like, if they like the college experience and the only reason they're going pro is because,
they're good enough and they can make a bunch of money.
Yeah, and they're just ready to make their money. Like, okay, well, listen, if you give us one more year, we can do this for you. And I don't know, man. I think I don't think that's out of the realm. Again, I could see a lot of guys staying for 1 year. Again, if they're a high-level athlete and they have the insurance already set up, which most of them do, then for me, yeah, I don't think it's that crazy for him to be like, you already know there's like 5 other running backs there at the University of Georgia. So, hey man, come back, give us 15 to 25 carries a week. And that was the other thing, is it wasn't like Nick Chubb was their only thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have him run 15 to 25 times a week for 12 weeks out of the year, and then whatever the playoff situation is.
Yeah, absolutely no way you don't take the deal.
I mean, listen, there are enough people who would say, yeah, I'd rather just go to the NFL. So I do want to make that really clear that there probably are enough people that makes it a long shot. Like, there's probably enough people, if you had 200 college players in front of you that could go to the NFL, probably 80% would just go ahead and go to the NFL. But there are a lot of guys who love college. Ricky Williams is one of those guys. Granted, he's a head case, but in every one of his documentaries, every time anybody talks to him, he's like, I loved playing for UT. Like, I loved it. I loved college. Like, I didn't want to leave. It's just when you're done playing, they just, okay, it's time to move on. Go to the pros now. So,
yeah, they just scuffle you out of there, and you're like, oh man, but I like you.
Right. And so I can see, Matt Leinart chose to play his senior year for no good reason, and that actually cost him draft status and a couple $1 million. Now, granted, it turns out he had no business being a quarterback in the NFL anyway. But at the time when no one knew that, he would have been the number 1 overall quarterback. And instead he was like, I'm going to come back for my senior year and do this and do that, including ballroom dancing with his girlfriend.
Whatever the case may be.
That was such a news story back then. He took a ballroom dancing class with his girlfriend, and when people got a hold of his schedule, and it turns out the reason he's not in the NFL is because he essentially was graduated. He needed 1 credit for something or other, and so he was taking the 1 class he had to have to actually finish his degree requirements for graduation, and then it was 2 other electives, and then ballroom dancing that he was taking with his girlfriend at the time. And people were like, why is he doing this? He must not care about football.
But the thing about that is that, dancing would help you in football because it gives you better coordination.
Yeah, the number of people who've taken, ballet and other stuff to help them, tons
of sports people take dance because dance is a great way to, be in more tune with your body.
Also, let's be clear, there's going to be very few times in your life where you're king of the world, okay? Starting quarterback at USC, covered nationally on ESPN, projected to be the number 1 draft pick overall, and you get to say, you know what, I'm going to come back for my senior year, and I'm going to take ballroom dancing with my girl.
Yeah,
there's very few times you get to be. I think it's an awesome moment for him.
Yeah, no, I agree.
There's very few times you're going to get to make those kind of decisions for yourself and for, the people around you. And again, with the insurance rider in the bag, you're definitely going to get your NFL type rookie contract money. So, yeah, I don't see what the issue is. Yeah, I mean, if you want to stay, stay. And now if you're ready to go, go. And I think those are the, again, 80% would probably go instead of players in a year, but that's why a lot of people do leave early when they can. And then for some people, again, that's why it's a choice, because some people are going to choose the other way.
Right. They want to get the most out of their opportunity there. Some people are like, well, I don't see, do I want to enjoy my time more, or do I want to go straight to go into this professional environment?
Exactly. Okay. So remember that I am one of the smartest people in radio, and that I correctly pick big national stories in advance before everyone knows our national stories. The NFL salary cap has become a thing now. They finally have announced the number, and it wasn't even what they thought it was going to be. Last year's cap number was 198 point whatever. This year's number is 182 point whatever. So originally they thought it was going to drop like a lot. Then they said, no, it's going to stay the same. It winds up dropping some. And now that everything's finalized and they know the numbers and they know what your cap numbers counted for last year and all that, the Saints at this point, now they've made cuts, but before they made any moves, we're now 100 million over the cap.
Oh my god.
So they've now cut, I think it's 6 players, like starters with good deals, including Janoris Jenkins, who was their starting cornerback. He was on the books for, I think, 13 or 14. They're for sure saving 7. And if they post date this to be a June 1st move, they can save an extra $4 million.
Wild. Oh my god.
So they are slowly but surely digging their way out. The Chiefs are starting to experience a little bit of, well, almost every team in the league is going to experience cap issues here because very few teams were under the cap. There's always about 8 teams that are under the cap for whatever reason, and it's because they are so bad that they know they're not going to go for a Super Bowl. Teams like Jacksonville are probably a solid 35 million under the cap. A team like the Chiefs, though, that are chasing Super Bowls, they're always going to be kind of pushing it. So when the number drops instead of rises, they're going to be in a little bit of a panic flop sweat mode. They are starting this year about 20 million over the cap. So the moves they made to fix it is they went ahead and cut both starting tackles this year, which frees up about 18 of the 20 they're over. The only problem with that is if you watch the Super Bowl, they needed those guys. The Super Bowl, for those who don't remember, at the Super Bowl, those two, both the starting left tackle and right tackle were out for the Super Bowl. And Tampa Bay's defensive line was healthy and incredibly aggressive. And by the end of it, when they showed the stats for what happened to the Chiefs quarterback when he would drop back, it was bad. Like the knockdowns, the hits, the getting rid of the ball early, all of those stats were all drastically in Tampa Bay's favor. And Eric Fisher has been an anchor for this defensive line, for this offensive line for the Chiefs since they drafted him number 1 overall 8 or 9 years ago now. But he tore his Achilles in the championship game leading into the Super Bowl. So he wasn't going to be here this year anyway. This is probably, if it's a salary cap move, this is probably towards the end of a deal of some kind. So it just kind of makes sense that a guy who was going to miss this whole year and this was the last year of a deal, it just makes sense that you would get rid of him.
Right. Last year of a deal, he's not playing anyways. It's like, I'm sorry, bud.
Yeah, they'll have to come to some kind of injury settlement with him, but it doesn't matter. It's all savings there. I don't know what this means for them. There's probably one or two other cuts they can make that get them back under. If they draft correctly, then it's not a big deal. They had a couple offensive linemen opt out of playing this year because of COVID, so they may not be in as much trouble as people think they are.
Right. And I mean, like, and there's no saying that they can't improve their linemen at all because, maybe it was just a lack of experience.
Well, listen, when you lose both, it's not a lack of experience. So here's the problem. By the time the playoffs come, you don't have the roster space to make any more moves. You've gone through 17 weeks of injuries. You've used all your tricks at this point. So the game before the Super Bowl, you lose both starting tackles. There's nothing you can do about that. At that point, you basically are out of backups. You're at that instant. The 5 guys you throw out there are the last 5 guys you have. And so it's not necessarily an indicator of how they're going to be this season because you have all season now. You have all camp. You have guys coming back from the COVID off season. You've got all kinds of other things. You've got a draft coming up. You've got free agency coming up. You're going to have opportunities to make the improvements you need to make.
Right.
I fully expect the Saints to be right against the cap again with a reloaded roster ready to rock and roll. They are going to probably
it's just what they do.
Yeah, it is what they do, and that's what most. And if you're competing for a Super Bowl, if you think you're a championship level team, you're up against the cap. You are maximizing your draft choices. You are bringing in guys for the veteran minimum. You're doing everything you've got to do to chase a title. And I don't think the Chiefs are going to be any different. And this is going to be the new normal for them. With Patrick Mahomes' contract about to kick in, I think next year, he's slowly going to start being more and more and more of the salary cap for the Chiefs. Granted, I think the salary cap's going to go back up pretty quickly.
Yeah, especially with everything starting back up.
Well, and again, so the salary cap is based on some math and some metrics and blah, 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 and how do they compute this and da-da-da-da. But at the end of the day, the number that it was after a whole season of most teams not having people in the stands at all was only 18 million off of where it was last year, or less than that. So if it was already almost what it was last year without anybody in the stands and in a down economy, I think the bounce back for the NFL will be very fast and very strong. Especially considering, I think I read the other day that the Biden administration has secured 94 million vaccines in its first 50 days. That at least puts them in a position to hit 100 million vaccines in 100 days. So that was their goal. 100 million vaccines would represent, I believe, between 25 and 33% of the United States population. It's a good, fast start to the program, right? I mean, that's
yeah.
You can get a fourth to a third of the nation vaccinated in 100 days. That says that bodes very well as a nation.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to take a break right here, and then when we come back, we're going to do some more Nerd Thug Sports. This is Corey DLG, and that's a little bit of Nico. We're jumping out. The Adventure Begins Comics, Games, and More is a wonderful store located right there on 1488 in Conroe that sells comic books, gaming cards, gaming accessories, board games, as well as all kinds of fun, nerd-assorted accessories. This is Corey DLG of Nerd Thug Radio, just reminding you that if you're interested, and if you're bored, if you got some free time, if you wanted to go hang out at an interesting or fun place, The Adventure Begins should be an option you consider. Everything from D&D Adventurers League to miniature painting, to even competitive card play and even competitive gaming events. All those things occur at The Adventure Begins Comics, Games, and More. Interested parties should absolutely check out the Facebook page for more information.
This is Rudy Tomjanovich, and welcome to Nerd Thug Radio.
Welcome back, Conroe, to Nerd Thug Sports right here on this Thursday afternoon. Hanging out here on, it's about 2:40-ish, 2:30-ish, depending on where you're at, because we time travel. And this is Corey DLG, and with me as usual is little brother Nico.
Yeah.
So, we've been talking sports already. We've been talking Japanese Joker governors. Before we do anything else, though, Nico's going to talk Adventure Begins, Comics, Games, and More.
The Adventure Begins, Comics, Games, and More is open and at full operating hours. Despite the lift on the mask order, we do ask you to please wear a mask if you want to come inside the store. But if you want to be even more safe, they do have delivery and curbside options available. They do have events running back up. Saturday, March 13th at 2 p.m. is the Pokemon Casual Meetup. And the same day at 6 p.m. is Hammer Time with the Warhammer and Tabletop Warhammer meetups back in full effect. We do love the Adventure Begins, Comics, Games, and More. They have all kinds of different events throughout the weeks. They have like Miniature Mondays. They have fantastic products, wonderful store, fantastic staff. Come on down to the Adventure Begins, Comics, Games, and More, right there off of 1488. Get your books there. You can get Corey's book there. You can tell him about your new book.
That's right. We got a Kickstarter going on right now for our second comic book, DMA issue number 2, as well as the first issue of DMA, the Department of Metahuman Affairs, and my other book, Another Day at the Office, both of which are just sitting happy as can be, comfy on the shelves of the Adventure Begins Comics, Games, and More. Now, you're there every other Tuesday. Did you go this week or do you go next week?
I was supposed to go last Tuesday, but I didn't because I had to do some homework and prep some stuff for my mom's birthday, which was on Wednesday.
That's right. You know, I texted your mom. I was good this time.
Oh, look at that.
Look at that. Who's on point? All right. So then you're going to go back in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm starting to see photos of my action figures, so I'm hoping my action figures come in soon.
Ooh, fancy.
It's the Marvel Legends House of X Powers of X series.
Oh, so which ones are they?
It's the Omega Sentinel, Karima, Cyclops, Wolverine, Marvel Girl, Professor X, and Magneto.
Oh, okay. Just the classics. Not getting any like weird ones. Is there like a Build-A-Figure in that set?
There probably is. I don't know what it is, but there probably is.
Probably Apocalypse. It makes sense because they bring back Apocalypse. It's probably the new one.
They do.
With like the robe looking design.
I think it's oh no, you know who it is? It's the Nimrod. The Build-A-Figure is the Nimrod that was in Powers of X. Yeah, it's a little bit of a letdown from what you were just saying. The weird figure in this one is the Omega Sentinel. She literally was in one run of the X-Men that was really cool, the Supernovas run, and I'm blanking on who wrote that. It might have been Matt Fraction. I'm trying to think now.
It's a great name.
It is. But like his group of X-Men was led by Rogue, and it was Rogue, Mystique, Cable, Lady Mastermind, Cannonball, Iceman, and then this Omega Sentinel. And so she's always been one of my like weird, cool characters that I knew of and liked from like the closet of X-Men history.
I mean, like Maggot was until they brought him back.
Man, I am so stoked for him to get an action figure. Yeah, and now Maggot is like full on back. He's on one of these like weird satellite X-Men teams that just showed up in Children of the Atom. But they didn't give him a South African accent, which was a little disappointing.
Tragic.
Very. All right, so we've been kind of meh. But there's still a lot of sports going on. So the basketball season probably, I think it picks up this weekend, because last weekend was All-Star weekend and they take the week off. The Spurs and LaMarcus Aldridge, though, have agreed to part ways. This is important for historical non-basketball reasons. LaMarcus Aldridge represents kind of the end of this huge Spurs run where they just put together these incredibly talented teams, and were just perpetually competitive, playing in finals, playing in the playoffs. I believe it was a 20-plus year run of playoff appearances the Spurs had, all under Greg Popovich. And essentially, the whole era, it starts with the pairing of David Robinson with Tim Duncan for a couple of years. Then David Robinson leaves. Then it's Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Ginobili. And then slowly, for a long time, it was the three of them and a bunch of talented, but not next-level talented guys. But then all of a sudden, it was Tim Duncan, Ginobili, Parker, with Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green. And suddenly, there were so many good players that Ginobili was regularly coming off the bench and had no complaints about it. Like, he was like, yeah, I mean, it's such a good, deep team that obviously there's nowhere from, like, I'm just happy to play on this team.
Right. Like, it's just cool for me to be here.
Right, exactly. And Ginobili was a guy at that point who already had a couple of rings. He was already a starter. Now, he's always gone back and forth between being the sixth man and being a starter. But it never seemed to bother him or affect his game. You never would hear things from him like he needs to start. Like Allen Iverson flat out would tell you the idea of him not starting a game is silly. Carmelo Anthony, famously on a podcast, basically went down the Rockets roster asking who was better than him for why he couldn't start. That's not the way to do that.
Yeah.
And the truth is, sometimes it's not about sometimes it's not about that I'm the best guy, so I should be starting, because, okay, maybe I already got 2 or 3 guys out on the court that I'm confident can carry this section of basketball. Maybe I need you out there when they're not out there for the points and the energy and the leadership that you bring.
Right, yeah.
And
just because you're on the back line doesn't mean you're bad.
Exactly. And I think Ginobili really took that to heart. I think that's one of those things that James Harden personified when he was in Oklahoma City. There was always talk nationally, like, how long can they convince James Harden to be the sixth man instead of a starter? When in reality, he was playing the same minutes and he was finishing the games on the floor with the other starters. So it isn't like he was missing something. It just meant that he got to sit down the first 10 minutes of the game.
Right, yeah.
And so there's a lot of the Spurs era was kind of filled with these, like, things that should have been an issue and were issues everywhere else for everyone else. The Spurs had no problems with. And then bringing in LaMarcus Aldridge, they signed him from Portland, where he'd played 8 really good years, and he was a free agent, and he just basically told Portland, I'm not coming back. Dame Lillard was really just starting to come into his own, and it wasn't. LaMarcus Aldridge was ready to move on. He wanted to play for a contender. There was about 5 teams he would even agree to meet with. One of them was the Spurs, and the Spurs just flat out showed him a shot chart of, like, where they shoot the ball right now, and then they showed a shot chart of where he shoots from, and he basically shot places they don't put people. And they're like, look, there's already a hole in our offense that you fill. And so he signed there for a max, 5-year, 4-year. I think it was a 5-year deal back then for the CBAs. And so this is the last year of it. It's $24 million. But the thing of it is, it was going to be Kawhi Leonard, LaMarcus Aldridge, and then the Spurs were going to keep drafting good players around them. Well, the Kawhi Leonard relationship falls apart very quickly. And Kawhi Leonard's gone. And so he goes to Toronto. And now LaMarcus Aldridge is kind of by himself, and it's not the same team. And so him now not coming back to the Spurs sort of signifies the end of that long, slow breakup that's been happening. Tim Duncan retired, I believe, 3-4 years ago. Tony Parker went to the Hornets 2 years ago. Ginobili finally retired. Kawhi Leonard went to Toronto 2 years ago. I mean, it's been this slow unraveling. DeMar DeRozan is who they got back for Kawhi Leonard, and I'm not 100% sure that he's a Spur now either. So the team as it stands now may be completely different. I don't know where he's going to go. He can literally go anywhere because he's on the last year of a $24 million contract, which means he is the sexiest of sexy trade bait in all of the NBA, which is immediate cap relief.
Right, because you bring him on and then he's gone.
You bring him on, by the end of this, he plays, 30 games for you, 20 games for you. But if you're bringing him on because he's going to clear your books of $24 million of commitment at the end of this season. So if you're a bad team who thought you would be good, a la Houston Rockets, if you're a team who just needs a guy and you've got enough players put on your bench that you can bring in one more big upgrade, maybe Miami, maybe LA, maybe the Knicks. There's opportunities. So he can literally, LaMarcus Aldridge could go anywhere. He's a good player, but some teams see the expiring contract as even a better benefit than having the good player.
Right, because it helps the franchise in the long run.
Right, so there's literally no telling where he goes.
Yeah,
the Spurs,
he is literally the freest one.
Right, he will probably go in some kind of deal that is almost no, I'm not going to say that. I was going to say almost as costly as like the James Harden thing because the salary cap space is so valuable because it's such a big number and he's so talented. But more than likely, it'll be for a couple players and a couple picks. But that in and of itself for the Spurs will be massively invaluable because I promise you, any players they take on are going to be guys that they want to invest in and make better as players. And when they do that, they wind up creating all-stars. They make monsters.
Such an interesting franchise.
It really is. Okay, so there was a guy in the league by the name of Boris Diaw who kind of bounced around a little while. The first time he caught my attention, he was playing for the Phoenix Suns on the Mike D'Antoni, Steve Nash run-and-gun Suns, okay? And he was important. He was a bench guy, but he was important for a couple different reasons. One of which is that Tony Parker basically vouched him into the league. Essentially, I don't remember who it was. It might have been the Spurs. He might have been a Spur before he was anything else. But basically, I believe he's a Frenchman as well. And the story was that Tony Parker played like a year or saw him playing in a French league, or Tony Parker now owns a French team and this guy was on it. Something along the lines of Tony Parker was privy to get to either watch him play or play with him and was like, this guy is an NBA talent. More importantly, though, Boris Diaw was not quite a traditional big man. He was about 6'8", 6'9", but he had decent weight on his frame. He's a little bit heavier guy, but he could shoot, pass, defend, and had quick feet. He was essentially what Draymond Green is now is the potential that was in Boris Diaw and how Boris Diaw stuck around in the league. He winds up being the backup center in the gunning Suns when Amari Stoudemire starts having knee trouble, which is almost right away. Right, almost immediately after Amari Stoudemire signed his max deal, he had to start having microfracture surgeries and started having issues in his knees and was never the same again. It was one of the things that just crippled the Suns. Is one of their big super weapons just never could go anymore. But Boris Diaw was the backup center. And all of a sudden you would see this guy, and he's bigger, but he's got guard handles and could play kind of at an interesting level. And then he goes to the Spurs, and they wouldn't use him a lot in the regular season, but in the playoffs, Boris Diaw would get a solid 15, 20 minutes, and it would, every time he would be on the court, he would make 2 or 3 plays where I was like, why isn't this guy playing all the time?
He's just crushing dudes.
Well, it's just there was something very, and then Draymond Green goes and does it at kind of the level that I was thinking about and seeing and looking at, where he was a big guy who was playing high energy, but was quicker and smaller than the true bigs of the NBA, but could still give them trouble. But also he could shoot and pass. There was a lot of just.
There's a lot of good quality.
A lot of it. And all of a sudden, if you had Boris Diaw in one-on-one situations, if you're a big man, you're totally screwed because you don't know what's going to – he could shoot it, he could dribble it, he could pass it. There was just no
And he's
telling.
just way faster than you, probably.
He just very quick, and not necessarily faster in any sort of like
insane metric.
way.
But he's not blitzing anybody, but
right. But he's just faster than you. And it was just always – that was always the way it was for Boris Diaw. And the Spurs are really the guys who, in the playoffs, would maximize that out of him by basically just telling him, listen, you're going to play about 14 to 16 minutes, ball out. And he would go super hard for them in those moments. And you could just see, like, man, if you had 2 or 3 guys who played like this all the time, you'd be – I don't know how teams would handle that. And then you fast forward a couple of years, and it's Draymond Green for the Warriors, and it's essentially the exact same model, just 35, 40 minutes a game. And that's when you begin to understand, like how some of these guys could really change an NBA floor, like when they play. Right. And that to me is a full credit to the Spurs, the way they used Boris Diaw, the way they saw. Because the Suns didn't see it. The Suns were like, he's our backup center.
Yeah, he's a backup center. And then the Spurs take him, and they're like, oh, you fit right here. And
really,
they just use him just to maximum efficiency.
Exactly. They would put him out there with like 2 or 3 scrubs and like one other good guy. You know how like in the middle of a game, in your middle minutes, you're just trying to get everyone a rest, but also get everyone. You need everyone on the court still.
Right.
So like 2 guys sit down, but one of your stars stays out there. And then he's playing with like a B team. Like that's what they would do is they would go like, okay, Tony Parker, Boris Diaw, and 3 other dudes. Or Tim Duncan, Boris Diaw, and 3 other dudes. But by swapping 2 stars out and putting Boris Diaw in and then the 3 other dudes, it would consistently work because Boris Diaw could just go all out for his little 15 minutes of game time and didn't have to worry about being tired at the end or whatever. And could just make plays for them. And that kind of the sort of it factor that he would put out on the floor was special. It was interesting. And it was the Spurs who first were maximizing that. And then the Warriors very quickly with Draymond Green saw the same kind of parallel.
It's just really funny because it's just like a template. It's like, well, this is just the better version of this.
It really is. You can see where teams get ideas. You can see where teams lift whole concepts. And sometimes it's just certain players. Leandro Barbosa was he was like the 9th or 10th guy on the Hawks roster before the Suns got a hold of him and turned him into a starter. For their run and gun offense because he was so fast. Well, all of a sudden, everybody in the NBA was like, man, Leandro Barbosa is one of the fastest guys in the NBA. And then the question became like, why isn't he starting? So then his time with the Suns was up. It was, his time for a new contract, and the Suns were they were making change. I think they traded him away even. And after that, he started for the next 4 or 5 years. But really, the only reason he was starting was just his speed, because he didn't have a lot of the other skills in the NBA, but he was just
so fast
that there's always a place for someone who's faster than everyone else in the NBA.
Right.
And while eventually that sun will set on you, and hopefully you've learned other skills so you can stick around.
Sometimes it's all you need.
It's good enough to get you at least 1 or 2 deals in the NBA. And so for Leandro Barbosa, it came for him later in his career, because he spent the first 2 or 3 years just sitting in Atlanta, just doing nothing, absolutely nothing. And then he goes to the Suns, who are just sprinting nonstop. But they always had roster issues. The Suns so Stoudemire missed whole seasons with his knee stuff. And then also they would just perpetually, they would just be starting weird lineups, weird groupings of players. But what was interesting is you kept seeing the depth of the Suns because of that. Guys like Boris Diaw, guys like Leandro Barbosa would play and go on to have careers in the NBA because of the Suns.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could whole see where people were like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that does work. We should find a guy like that." Well, people may not recognize this, but it actually is the Spurs when they swept LeBron James's Cleveland Cavaliers. They were essentially a spread 'em offense right then, shooting threes. Danny Green and someone else, Patty Mills. So on that roster is Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Ginobili, Boris Diaw, Kawhi Leonard. This is Kawhi Leonard's coming out party. Danny Green and Patty Mills. Danny Green and Patty Mills each had like 15 points a game just on 3-pointers, and then played defense. And so essentially what I'm getting at is they were perpetually just parking 2 or 3 players on 3-point lines, and then kicking it into Tim Duncan or kicking it into Boris Diaw, and then having it bounce out to an open shooter, which essentially becomes the Warriors' offense.
So what we're saying is that the Spurs are just innovation and efficiency.
Yeah, to the maximum. And then they would run those sets for a little bit, and what you could see is even with the best player in the world on the floor, the other team couldn't stop it. And then it was like, man, if you had really good shooters, this would be a pretty hard offense to handle. And the Warriors were like, yeah, we've got some guys.
And then they go on their legendary run. So what you're telling me is that the Spurs is just the greatest team of all time, actually. They just don't get enough credit.
I'm going to say that the Spurs are the most well-run organization in all of sports.
All right.
All of sports. Because unlike the Patriots, who are also incredibly well-run, the Spurs don't piss people off usually. The Patriots, every player who leaves there flat out tells you, I came here to get a ring. We won. I'm leaving. I don't have anything else to say about it.
And people don't really like Bill Belichick as a guy.
Yeah. They don't like their time there. They like that they win. And in sports, it's incredibly important, and it's important enough that they're willing to give up 2 or 3 years of happiness to go play football for a crazy person, but win.
It's Bill Belichick, the mad genius, versus just well-run, well-oiled machines.
Right, and there's been some insight into that here lately, where they essentially tell guys, listen, if you do these particular things for us, you'll get on the court. If you don't do these things for us, you're not going to get on the court. And it's different for everybody, but they envision a role for every player they bring in, and they give them a blueprint where they're like, if you can do these 3 things for us, the more you do these 3 things, the more minutes you'll get.
Right. That's just so
and
smart.
So, it really is. And so people leave the Spurs really feeling like either they maximized their potential or they didn't, and it's their own fault. Like, very few people ever leave the Spurs going like, those guys screwed me over. Kawhi Leonard was really one of the first people who didn't have nice things to say about leaving the Spurs.
And, I mean, he's one guy. I trust the judgment.
He's one guy, but also there was a lot of stuff. Like, he had more of a beef with the team doctor than the team. Like, it was a lot of weird stuff. We are way over on time. I don't envy Nico having to cut out all the ums and make this work.
I will be fine.
This is Nerd Thug Sports on behalf of little brother Nico and myself and the Adventure Begins Comics, Games, and More. Same Nerd Thug time, same Nerd Thug channel. It looks like we're on pace for 100 million vaccines in 100 days, which is exciting. It's the first step in getting back to normal. I hope everyone chooses to continue to wear their masks, at least for the time being, until more people here in Texas get vaccinated. But stay safe, stay clean, wash your hands, keep socially distant. Let's start getting back to normal, and let's get this place kicking again. I'd like to go to a Comic Palooza this year. Let's make it happen, guys. Stay safe, everybody. I'll see you guys. We'll see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. for Nerd Thug Radio.